Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, and we are taking a look at, okay, spoiler alert, we're taking a look today at the Philadelphia Flyers. The Flyers have gotten off to a pretty good start, and there's reason for concern, and we'll get to that later on. But the Philadelphia Flyers, as of right now, listen, for all things considered, through the first 9 games of the season, 5-2-2 is their record. They got 5 wins, 2 regulation losses, and 2 overtime or shootout losses. So for the Philadelphia Flyers, and I did get to see them in their first game with John Tortorella in the preseason. They came to UBS Arena in Belmont to take on my New York Islanders, and neither team looked that good. It was kind of the game of the misfits. And the Flyers didn't look very good. And, besides a couple minutes where Tony DeAngelo ended up scoring a goal in the second period and there was a little surge, other than that, the Flyers looked pretty weak in their first game under their new head coach. But the Philadelphia Flyers have turned things around and actually put together a pretty good campaign so far. But there is things we have to look at that are a little concerning. A couple of injury updates on Couturier and Van Riemsdyk and potentially Ryan Ellis. But we're going to start off with the positives. So looking at the Flyers so far this season, you're looking at a team so far, like I said, 5 wins on the season. They've got 24 goals this season, which is pretty good, and 22 goals against. So you look at it in that sense, they just haven't been able to score goals. That has been their biggest issue, and that is to be expected with a John Tortorella team with, kind of a lacking offense. You look at how many scorers are on this team. Who really scores on this team? It's Kevin Hayes, right? Kevin Hayes, Travis Konecny, and Tony D, and Joel Farabee. Those are your top guys, and that's kind of it. And that's kind of where the concern is. We want to see a little bit more from guys like Owen Tippett, Morgan Frost. You get what I'm saying? You want to see more from those young guys. So that's kind of what the situation is for the Flyers. And when you look, 24 goals for this season, that is second last in the entire National Hockey League. That's got to get better. But their goals against, as you would expect, is second best in the entire league with only 22 goals given up. So, when you look at the Flyers in terms of their defense, it has looked very good and very defensively sound. And you could definitely tell there's that system that has been implemented with Torts that seems to be going quite well. And now that there's some grease on the wheels, seems to be getting some traction. But the offense still isn't there. And that is my concern for the Flyers as we move forward. So we're going to get to the injuries now, and that is obviously a huge part of the situation. Now, the first one was, or the most recent one, is James Van Riemsdyk. And the Philadelphia Flyers placed JVR on the injured reserve, and he is expected to miss at least 6 weeks. So we probably will not see him till the beginning of December. If not, even maybe at the end of December, optimistically. Probably the new year. So that is a little concerning, and he is one of their top point producers. He's currently 5th on the team in points with 2 goals and 3 assists through his 6 contests so far with the Flyers. Another injury, Ryan Ellis. This is one we've known about, and the expectation is that he has been placed on the injured reserve, and this is from Anthony DeMarco. He said there is a belief around the league Ryan Ellis will never play professional hockey again. And that sucks for the Flyers because you guys remember that was they made a pretty big trade trading Nolan Patrick, which luckily for the Flyers and not so much for Patrick, he hasn't really turned out anywhere he's gone. He went to Vegas. I think he ended up, is he still in Vegas? He's been bouncing all over the place. So you kind of feel bad for that guy, but at least for the Flyers side of things, he never turned into that much. And that's, I guess, the silver lining in this is they didn't give up much for what they got in Ellis, except a bad contract. And that's really the most detrimental thing to bringing in Ellis is that contract. Sean Couturier, also known as Coots around here in Philadelphia, the Flyers placed Sean Couturier on injured reserve, and he's expected to miss the next 3 to 4 months of action. So hopefully we see him, hate to say this, probably February, March, right around the trade deadline at the end of February. That's probably the next time we see Couturier, and that's a real shame because he's a guy that could have led the team in points this season, and potentially that's 82 points. Optimistically that you're losing on the roster, and maybe to a lesser extent, maybe 65 to 70. That is likely where The Flyers are, again, you're losing that production up front. That's a huge loss for the Flyers. Patrick Brown, Bobby Brink, and Cam Atkinson all are also out of the lineup. Brown and Brink are on injured reserve, and that was announced earlier this year in July and April. And John Tortorella said there's no update on Atkinson's injury, and that was back in October and is expected to be an upper body injury. So, again, you look at maybe not so much Bobby Brink and Patrick Brown, but Sean Couturier, James Van Riemsdyk, and Cam Atkinson. Those are guys that score goals for the Flyers. So those are three guys, critical misses in terms of the lineup. And that's kind of why you're seeing them in second last in the league in scoring. Those three guys being out of the lineup is a huge part of that. Now, with that said, you look at their power play and penalty kills so far this season. They're averaging 2.67 goals for. We already talked about that. Their power play is abysmal. Absolutely terrible. So the league average this season so far at power play is a little over 21%. The Flyers are averaging 19% on the power play, which is disgusting. So they are not doing too well in that regard. Penalty kill is well above average, as you kind of expect with the Tortorella team and the layout of this team. They're at a little under 83%, 82.76% on the penalty kill. The average in the league is 78%, so almost 4% difference. Again, they're able to keep the puck out of the net, and we'll talk about goaltending in a second. That's been pretty good as well, but they can't score goals. And that's kind of been the theme so far for the Flyers. And are they able to escape that? Yeah, maybe. But again, is this sustainable? And that's really the big question for the Flyers. So the league average in terms of save percentage this season is a perfect 900, and that never really deviates too much. If anything, that might even go up to potentially 910 at the end of the season as goalies get a little bit sharper and a little bit more in the flow. Well, the Flyers are getting well above average goaltending. 932 save percentage so far for the Philadelphia Flyers goaltending, which is huge because that was a huge weakness for the Flyers last year. You know, the lack of goaltending was kind of concerning. They really weren't getting great goaltending. And that has not been the case this season. Definitely a huge, huge turnaround. And again, that comes back to Tortorella's system. Hey, listen, he said during the summer, he said our defense needs to be better so the goaltending can do what they need to do. If there's a bunch of 2-on-0s and 3-on-1s and odd man rushes coming back, yeah, you're going to give up a lot of goals. You can't really blame the goaltending for that. You have to have a system where the goaltending is in a position where they can succeed, and that has worked so far for Torts and the Flyers. Looking at the save percentages so far, the young but somehow older goaltender than Carter Hart, Felix Sandstrom, he's got 2 starts this season for the Philadelphia Flyers, and he is not able to get a win so far. He is at league average in terms of his save percentage, though. He's at 900 save percentage. 3 goals a game, and that's probably a part of the issue for him so far. He has given up some goals in those games. Again, that's partially on the team, but he has given up 3 goals per game as the backup, and that's why we haven't seen him too much this season. Totally different story for Carter Hart. Carter Hart has been absolutely incredible for the Flyers. He's got 5 wins this season in his 7 games. He's given up 15 goals this season through 7 games, which is under 3. It is 2.10 in terms of his goals against average, which is very impressive. And the most impressive thing is he's putting up video game numbers in terms of goals against and his save percentage. His save percentage is .943. That is incredible. Carter Hart is back. Now, is this for the long term? We don't know yet. And I think that is something you have to consider when you look at the Flyers' sustainability at this rate. I don't think that's sustainable. I absolutely kudos to Carter Hart. But to expect him to have a .943 save percentage in January, it's just not going to be there. It's just not. And I expect that goals against average to stay there around 2 goals per game. That is pretty good. And especially in today's league, but a .943 save percentage is not sustainable. It's just not going to stay there. And we've started to see the Flyers slip a little bit in the standings. Now, again, that's not to their fault. A lot of teams have started to make up games, and that's kind of been a part of that. But when you look at the standings right now, they are still in a decent spot. They're currently sitting fifth in the Metropolitan Division. The Rangers and Devils both have 14 points. The Devils have really turned things around. Carolina's got 13 points, and then it is a three-way tie for that fourth spot in the Metropolitan Division. The Capitals, the Flyers, and the New York Islanders. So, the Flyers are right in the thick of the chase. I think they're in a pretty good spot, and I've said this throughout the month of October as we kind of get into November here. You can't win seasons in October, but you can lose seasons in October. And to the Philadelphia Flyers' credit, and a lot of people maybe predicted them to lose their season in October, they've not done that. So kudos to John Tortorella, kudos to Carter Hart, and kudos to the guys that are on that roster, because it's been a rough start here for the Flyers in terms of the perception of the team going into the season and the expectations. It's been kind of one side or the other. It's either you see the Flyers as a playoff team that could really compete, or kind of my opinion on the Flyers going in was they don't have the scoring depth. How good is that defensive structure really going to be? And there's just a lack of depth on this team, and I just didn't see that. We'll see what happens. They've had a good start so far. They've given Flyers fans something to cheer for on the nights that the Phillies aren't playing. So shout out to the team for that. But this is definitely an interesting storyline to keep an eye on. So the real question of today's video is this sustainable for the Philadelphia Flyers? And I'm going to say no. Now, here's a caveat to that. So I don't think this is sustainable for the Flyers. One, because of the lack of goal scoring. There just hasn't been enough goal scoring on this team, and I think that's going to show up, especially now that James Van Riemsdyk is now back out of the lineup. That's really going to hurt them. Excuse me. And you look at the teams that they've played against, they've caught teams at the right time. Florida, they were able to get that win against Florida last week. They looked a little shaky. Vancouver's not a very good team. New Jersey looked terrible out of the gate. They got to win there. Tampa didn't look good out of the gate. They got to win there. So those first three games, they caught teams a little bit, on their back foot. And I think that's, if they played New Jersey or Tampa today, I don't think they would get those wins necessarily in the way that they did. So let me know what you guys think down below. I think, obviously, Carter Hart's save percentage is a huge reason for that, and shout out to Carter Hart, but that .943 save percentage, it's just not sustainable. Now, do I think that the Flyers will definitely get a chance at a playoff spot? I want to see them compete till February and make it a decision for Chuck Fletcher on whether they go for it or not, because at this rate, it's too early in the season to even really think about playoffs. There's so much hockey left. But I think the Flyers, like I said, they didn't lose the season in October. And right there, I think that's something to be, kind of a momentum builder as they move along. Hey, you know what? This Tortorella system thing, it is working. And I think that buy-in from the team as it continues, Tortorella can say, listen, all those things we sacrificed and did during training camp, a lot of hard days, a lot of hard nights, it's paying off for you guys now. You just have to continue to believe the system. And I think that is paying off so far. For how long, we'll see. I'm going to go with it isn't sustainable, but I guess we'll see what happens. Guys, let me know what you think down below. Do you think the Flyers' success so far this season is sustainable, or do you think it will utterly collapse, or do you think it'll be somewhere in the middle where, they have a lot of close games that they just aren't able to win because, they can't win those 2-0, 1-0 games. They lost to the Rangers the other night, 1-0 in overtime. They just aren't able to win those close games because they don't have the scoring depth. And I just worry that as this thing goes along, that is going to be a theme for this Flyers team. But let me know what you guys think. This is a team that scores goals in bunches. They've already gotten shut out twice this season against the Sharks and most recently against the Rangers. They scored 5 goals in the first game, 3 in the next 3 games. In the next 4 games, they scored 3 goals in each of those games, and then 0 goals, 4 goals, 3 goals, 0 goals. So I think it's going to come to a point where it's going to be a lot of those 2-1, 1-0 games, 3-2 games. They have to be able to win those games. And everybody talks about that, but I think for the way the Flyers play, that is their key to success, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.